Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Gwilda Wiyaka's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the Science of Magic or endorsed in any manner by Gwilda Wiyaka, Relmar McConnell Media Company, its affiliated networks, stations, or employees. Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, and can be also found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring When All Else Fails. There was a time not so long ago when we were in a lower frequency part of the galaxy. During those times, we could predict outcome by observing what had happened in the past. There were tried and true rules handed down for generations that a person could count on. Follow those rules and things went well. One found safe passage. However, our solar system is moving into an area of the galaxy where the energy is much more highly charged. This bathes the Earth in more luminosity or brightness. The increase in light is raising the ambient frequency. Frequency dictates reality. Thus, reality is evolving and rules changing. For generations, we've been directed by outside forces, the rules and mores of our culture. In the face of evolving realities, the very rules we've relied upon for millennia are rapidly failing. Societal structures crashing around us. Due to the increased bandwidth of light and resulting expansive reality, there are more options open to us than ever before. In the absence of rules and norms, how do we navigate this new world emerging? Where can we find guidance when even our religions are failing us? With the new options, how do we know what to choose? When all else fails, look within. Every plant and animal on the planet has an inner guidance system. The sunflower grows facing the sun, the deer migrate to green fields, the salmon swim back to their home waters to spawn, the geese fly south in the time for winter, and so on. So what happened to humans? As dormant as it may be, we came with an inner guidance system as well. We've simply been directed from without for so long, the poor thing is atrophied from denial and use. The rules are changing almost daily, and our environment is becoming increasingly volatile. If ever there was a time to take out our inner guidance system and dust it off, the time is now. Yet, where does one begin? How can one tell if we're actually getting information from inner guidance or just being triggered into past trauma? How can we tell we're being directed by our intuition, or are we simply being controlled by guilt, shame, and conditioning? Accurately discerning where seemingly intuitive information is coming from is harder than one might think. We've been programmed by guilt and shame in order to render us controllable by the system. To complicate things, we all carry damage from past traumas that could be mistaken for clear and present danger. For example, I may be contemplating an action only to feel it's wrong. Do I feel it's the wrong thing to do because my intuition or inner guidance is advising me against it? Or am I being messaged by guilt that has been posed on me from an outside source? I may be in a situation and suddenly feel I'm in danger. Is it because my intuition is picking up a dangerous circumstance? Or is it because the situation at hand reminds me of one in which I suffered trauma in the past? The key to unearthing and using one's intuition lies in knowing oneself. Ideally, we would uncover and heal all our past traumas, processing out guilt and shame. However, at this point, we really can't wait to arrive before activating and engaging our inner guidance. While I'm absolutely an advocate of healing and processing, there ultimately is no replacement for it. In the interim, it's paramount that we do some soul searching. By closely observing our reactions, we can start to recognize when we're triggered into past trauma rather than coming from the present. We can start to identify where we're tempted to be controlled by guilt and shame rather than right action based on our present intent. When all else fails, look within. Uncover what you really want, find who you really are, and come from there in your decisions and actions. Ultimately, as long as we do no harm to ourselves or others, there are no consistent right or wrong choices, simply those most appropriate to the time, circumstance, and our chosen path. Our guest this hour, Tracey Lockwood, is a psychic educator, ordained minister, and professional clairvoyant medium. As a psychic mentorship educator, she teaches others how to access and open their abilities. As an ordained minister, she serves as executive director to the executive minister to the universal mind. As a public speaker, she lectures and educates audiences on a vast array of topics, including psychic mediumship, paranormal, and life after death. After this commercial break, I'll introduce Tracey, and together we'll explore uncovering and re-engaging our personal guidance system. You're listening to The Science of Magic, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Tracey Lockwood, a psychic educator, ordained minister, and professional clairvoyant medium. Her website, www.mediumtraceylockwood.com. Tracey, thanks for joining us on The Science of Magic.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It's nice to have you here. Tracey, when did you first discover you had psychic gifts?
Well, I'm not sure that I classified them as psychic originally or even as being a medium originally. My first memory was when I was in my crib as a baby. My feet were about 3 inches long, and I was looking up and sort of kicking my feet at sort of a mobile thing that was hung over the crib. And I could see the faces of people, guides and ancestors, pushing through the ethers. They looked like they were just putting their face through and swimming around sort of in a tadpole shape kind of thing, if you can imagine it, over my crib. And all my life, I've always had people gravitate to me for advice at the most critical portions of their lives. And I've always considered that a great honor. And so probably I didn't realize it until much later.
So when you started to realize that you were different, what was that like for you?
For me, I just kept things to myself. I think it probably, in a way, I felt that I was different, but nobody talked about the types of phenomenon or experiences or the way that I received information, so I didn't either. You know, when you just start knowing things, and I think a lot of people misunderstand what it is to be psychic, just like I did. You know, if the phone rings and you know who it is, we don't go, oh my God, I'm a psychic. You just go, oh, that's kind of weird that I knew that was so-and-so on the phone. And as I was growing up, there were a lot of occurrences like that. When I was probably 3, I had a tricycle, and I had lost my tricycle, and I was very disturbed by that. And I was outdoors, and I was just beside myself, and I heard a voice that said, "It's over there." And I didn't hear it external to myself. I heard it within myself. And I turned and looked, and there was my tricycle. And that's what we would call clairaudience. But most people, when they get something like that, they don't go, "Oh my God, that was a clairaudient message." They don't identify it or label it that way. And through my life, just different things like that happened. I had a opportunity when I came into Girl Scouts one day. I was running a little late, which is never too different for me. And I had just walked through the door at the last minute of the beginning of the meeting, and they said, "Oh, good, you're here. We're guessing how many jelly beans are in the jar." And I said, 88. And the lady just about dropped her teeth because there were exactly 88 jelly beans in the jar. And I would consider that a form of either telepathy, like the number being in her head, or psychometry in terms of sensing very quickly the information from an object. I wish I could do that with lottery tickets, but I don't think so.
I don't play games real well, but every so often my children will insist. And every time I sit down to play Trivial Pursuit, I didn't grow up in this country. I know nothing of trivia. But if anybody at the table had the answer, it would pop into my head, so I'd usually do pretty well. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, that would be a very telepathic connection. And we have that ability as people, and we just really, like I said, just don't think about it or talk about it. Telepathy is a mind-to-mind connection. And it doesn't really matter whether the person is in the same room as you or across country or on the other side. It's a connection mind to mind with that person. And empathy is the other larger set of skills, and that's a soul-to-soul connection. Mind-to-mind communication or telepathy deals with words, and words are the language of the physical world, but empathy deals with emotions, and emotions and feelings are the stories and more complete information that we speak when we're out of body. A lot of people that have...
I'd like to clarify on that. Also, empathy, can't it come across as physical sensations as well? Because I know as a medical intuitive, I can empath in my body what's going on in another person's body. So is it more about where you're listening, if you're listening to the mental, emotional, or physical arena of a person's being with empathy, or am I misinterpreting that?
Yeah, that's a very interesting gift that you have too. Yes, empathy can affect us on all three of those levels. But emotions are different than our thoughts, and we can actually lie with our thoughts and be true with our emotions, too. That's where the real truth of the story is. And when I'm connecting with someone that's on the other side, or even someone that's living, there's just a sense of their personality and being. And in the physical sense of that, yes, if I'm focusing on how they passed, when I first started, I actually experienced sometimes the feelings that they had while they were transitioning, and sometimes that wasn't. The first time it happened to me, it was really extreme. I got a pain in my head and the side of my left temple, and I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to just die of a stroke right here reading for this person. And then I got a pain that went up from the left side of my chest, up my neck, and then down again into my lungs. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to pass. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm fine. So that transference of experience. And once I relayed what I was experiencing, the woman didn't even have any she wasn't at all as interested as I was in the fact. She was like, oh, yeah, that's my grandfather. That's how he passed.
And that's how he died.
Sort of matter of fact. To me, it was like, oh, my goodness, that's so cool. But I did ask my guides to tune that down, and I think probably you, too, as you work that way, we learn to pick up more and more subtle cues so that we pick it up at just a much more subtle level after we get acclimated to that.
Do you think that empathing on that level can actually pose a threat to us physically if we aren't mindful to field it?
What I think is that we are sort of clouds of energy. If you want to think of it, I think of us as a torus of energy, that kind of inner tube shape of energy, and we're particles of light and other things, and so is everyone else. And it's quite natural when we come in contact with other people to mirror or to pick up intuitively or empathically their emotions or physical conditions. We can kind of sense them. That's a natural ability. Where it becomes perhaps dangerous or something to pay attention to is obviously if you're working in the field, you want to have very clear boundaries between where you are and where someone else is.
That's a good point. Do you sometimes get unsolicited information from others, like private information that you weren't necessarily given permission to access?
I think because I have been this way since I was literally born, I've somehow along the way developed pretty good boundaries about that, and I kind of keep my radio dial turned down so that it's just set to the emergency broadcast system. So I really, because I can pull in, energy follows focus. So if I open myself up, there's no limit to where I can go or what kind of information I can get. But that would be really fatiguing on a daily basis. So I try to keep a healthy boundary with that. But obviously you do get surprised on occasion.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't need to know that. TMI.
Well, I think if it's brought to our attention, it's for a reason. Maybe, again, like that difference between the mental layer or the verbal layer where people are like, blah, 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 and then underneath you're like, you are so cheating on your husband, or something like that. And it, but they're talking as if they're just the most chaste person and just happy in their marriage. And you're like, how many boyfriends do you have? There is that split. And I think that's, a lot of your listeners, I'm sure because of the type of show that you offer, are probably particularly intuitive. And so they probably pick up on a lot themselves, too.
Do you think that all people are intuitive?
I do. I'll tell you what, actually, there's a spectrum. And it starts, everybody absolutely has instinct, let's say that. And that's our instinct: food, clothing, shelter, survival, hot, cold, sex, just basic instinct. And most people have a sense that they have intuitive ability, and that intuitive ability they know is something about things that they can't just use their five senses in the physical world for. And then when it goes a little further, then it becomes psychic, and it becomes psychic at the point that you ask yourself, how did I know that? That was weird. That's that realm where your subconscious begins to talk to you, and it becomes mediumship when you can answer the question of where that information came from, and not only identify it, but classify it and describe it, and then going further, being able to convey more and more intricate and subtle messages that are more complete as you develop your abilities. And I do think that because we are much more than our physical self, that we can, energy follows focus, so you would have to intend it for the most part. Of course, it happens spontaneously for some, but you can develop your ability, absolutely.
And don't you find it fairly important during these times? It seems like things are changing pretty quickly right now.
I think that is absolutely right, and I think it's happening organically, because I just can't believe the number of people that come to me asking for help in understanding what's happening to them, or wanting to be able to develop their gifts. And people might wonder, well, why would you want to develop your psychic ability? And the best answer that I got was from Vincent J. Barra, who was on my radio show. And I asked him that question. He goes, well, I don't know. Why would you want to be intelligent? Or why would you want to be wealthy? It's an advantage.
Exactly. We're going to have to go to commercial break.
Sure.
Tracey and I will return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Previous broadcasts of thought-provoking episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. We will be back, so don't you go away. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is psychic educator and clairvoyant medium, Tracey Lockwood. Tracey, just before we went into the break, we were talking about why would a person want to develop their psychic gifts, and how can they help us during these times of rapid change? Did you have something more to share about that?
Oh, I just think it's a wonderful thing. It really makes life fascinating to be able to see more than meets the eye, and to be confident in that ability, to be able to trust the information. I noticed in your lead-in to the show that you were talking about that confusion that people can suffer, like, how do I know, is it real information or not? And I was thinking, sometimes that's because you can tell at what frequency the information is coming in. If it's encouraging and positive and wise and showing you a way through things, or advice for someone else that's helping them develop their own confidence and abilities, then it's true information. But if it's something that weighs you down or compresses your energy or makes you feel that there's no hope or afraid, they're kind of two tools that lower vibrational energies use to drag us down in an effort to usurp our energies. And one of them is fear and the other is lust. And those are two very general categories, and using a very antiquated term, lust, very much differentiated from passion, which is, of course, a wholesome and wonderful thing. But fear can be demonstrated as anger, and lust can be demonstrated as greed also. And so we were talking earlier about how, we're sort of these clouds of energy that reflect and take on properties of other people, and that if our vibration is not clear, that we can pull into ourselves if we don't know our boundaries, or we're not clear in our own vibration. If we're angry in a day, then it's easy for someone else who's angry to amplify that. And that's typically demonstrated when two people get together and start complaining about, yeah, well, this happened, well, and they all try to one-up each other, and it just gets grittier and grittier as it goes along. But the same can go the opposite direction, where you amplify positive and positive. And I advocate always bringing someone up to your own vibration rather than going down to theirs and trying to retrieve them.
Exactly.
You'll feel pretty silly when you finish if you go down there. So.
Well, they say meet a person where they're coming from, but I kind of set boundaries on that one as well.
Yes. Well, yeah. It's not to disallow the state of mind that they're in, because we all need a help up or a hand up or a step up or a way out sometimes. But maintaining your own position and speaking to their strengths rather than their weaknesses, or speaking to their possibilities and positive things rather than, and not in a Pollyanna kind of fake way either, but in a genuine, intuitive way that sort of becomes a guiding light for them, helping them.
I understand that you teach this work. How did you start doing that, and where did you get your education?
I had very little formal education with it, basically because until 2008, I hadn't even known that this was anything. I didn't have names for it. I had been in a Pentecostal church, and I had called it, tongues and interpretation instead of channeling, and prophecy instead of fortune telling, and a word of knowledge instead of intuition, a word of wisdom instead of psychic ability, and discerning of spirits rather than mediumship. It's all in 1 Corinthians for those that want to check that out. It is in the Bible, in the New Testament. So in 2008, I was in a metaphysical church. I won't name where, because I don't want to say something not so nice about it, but they were very repressive about helping people to understand that they themselves had abilities. But we had a visiting minister from England, and her name was Minister Val Williams, and she was just phenomenal as a medium herself. But what I really liked is there were no boundaries when she came, well, healthy ones, but no barriers, I should say, in terms of sharing how to do it. And it was very practical, and I was highly successful in the class that I took with her here. So I followed her and went to England to study more with her. I went to Arthur Findlay College of Psychic Science in Essex, England, and I was there for 3 classes. The classes last about 3 or 5 days. I had a 5-day class, a 3-day class, and a 5-day class, and they lasted from 9 in the morning to 9 at night, of course, with breaks and food and tea and all that between. And while I was there, not only did I bring through her mother, which was a great validation to me, because they teach evidentiary mediumship. How do you prove that you're talking to someone on the other side? Not just saying, oh, your grandmother's here and she's sending you love. And you're like, my grandmother's sending love,
She was the meanest old crotchety thing.
Right. So how do you prove that? And so I wanted to know that. So I went and studied presenting your mediumship and spirit art. And I did a class that was supposed to be called the Confident Medium, but it ended up being a trance class where we channeled and did trance healing and different things. And it was just fascinating. And I got readings with each of those 3 teachers, that I studied with. And every single one of them said, why aren't you teaching and doing private readings? And I was frankly floored, because that was the first time when I was there that anyone had referred to me as a medium. Minister Williams just said, will the next medium take the platform? And I was like,
I'm going to hide.
I'm a medium. Like I just completely had no association with the name medium, because I just never thought of myself that way. But
well,
apparently they thought I was good. So,
so how do you help your students access their gifts?
I follow their way of teaching, although I innovate the exercises and teach on a range from very intuitive to very structured, depending on what we're doing. But their premise is, we're going to show you what you can do rather than what you can't do. And then by learning what you can do, your confidence comes up, right? So I give them all kinds of exercises that range from the psychic to the mediumistic range there. When we're learning, the first indicator is our body. So muscle testing, pendulum, that gut instinct, that's the sort of rudimentary level there.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
And then the next level is when we use tools and of divination, which sounds all mystical and stuff, but it's basically like using tarot cards, or I love lithomancy, where you cast down different stones and its tools are just designed to detach your mind, your left brain, which is the critical part that says, impossible, there's no way, prove it to me, name, address, phone number, that kind of thing, and releases us. Sort of, I'm sure most of our listeners at some point in their life has daydreamed or looked at the clouds and started to see shapes. What is that? That's shifting into an awareness of your subconscious. So as you develop your gift, you start learning how to sustain your contact in that subconscious state and put yourself in that state more and more quickly and for longer and longer periods of time, so that you can pull information through without shutting it down with your left brain.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about bells and whistles. And, at least shamanically speaking, I've found my students don't often recognize the information, the esoteric information, because it comes to them on their normal input channels, if you will, if they're audio or kinesthetic, that sort of thing. And they're kind of expecting something much more dramatic like Hollywood. So do you find that people get psychic information in different ways, and how do you help your students recognize their particular way?
I think that definitely there are unlimited ways that spirit communicates with us. Basically, at the root of it is that they draw our attention to something in the physical world so that we can put our focus on that and hopefully deepen our understanding of what that is. And some people are more naturally fluent in touching an object and telling the story, or they may be more clairaudient in terms of they hear really clearly, but they don't see so well. But other people are very visual. They're very, and then so again, just giving them different exercises and releasing the tools at some point where you don't need a tool, where you can stay in that state with no tools. For instance, when I do my readings, I started drawing pictures because I couldn't explain what I was seeing. So I would draw these, what I called energetic sketches for people. But now I don't need anything. I don't need a picture of somebody to be able to connect with their energy, or, I really need very little information, sort of name and relationship, or even sometimes less than that. And sometimes I don't even need anything to start with that. But I do ask my clients to bring me questions, because I find when they're organized about what they want from the session, they're much more satisfied because they get everything answered that they were looking for, if it's possible in an hour to do that, But developing, we work in different ways when we're doing mediumship stuff. Sometimes I have the whole class look at one person. I call that gangbang reading. And everyone gives a message to that person. And then sometimes, sometimes I have one or two people. I often will put two people sort of on a platform or looking at the rest of the people, and it takes the pressure off of being the one, only one, and they kind of look out into the other faces and pick up what they pick up, and then they connect what they're getting with the person, or they feel drawn to a person. And some people come in more psychically, that's how I used to work, and sometimes still do work.
We're going to have to pick up with this on the other side of yet another commercial break. Tracey and I will be back on the flip side of this commercial break. You're listening to The Science of Magic on the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net, the place where altruistic professionals of science and the esoteric create common ground for the betterment of our world. You can always listen to previous transformative broadcasts on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Now, don't you guys leave me. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State-certified occupational school, training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, bringing together gifted people of service to the world. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is psychic educator and clairvoyant medium, Tracey Lockwood. Tracey, I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about education and how you work with teaching people to do this. In the state of Colorado, if you're teaching anyone anything they can use in a profession, you actually have to be certified by the Division of Private Occupational Schools. So my school is a state-certified school. I understand you're in Virginia. Is there any such regulation there?
Well, there is no option to be certified as a medium. The Department of Professional Occupation Regulation doesn't have a category for something like that. I am an ordained minister, and I am certified through the Universal Mind, which is the 501c3 that I serve. And I am actually in the process of creating a professional psychic mediumship certification program. I'm hoping to debut that in February 2017. It will be a live interactive classroom where I'm doing my best to find a venue and format platform to be able to reconstruct the sense of being in the classroom live with me. And it'll be a limited number of students. I don't like to have too many in there. Both people tend to get shy, and also I like to make sure everybody gets a chance to work. So I'll be limiting the class to 15 people, and it'll be a 12-week program that will have a lot more than just 12-week sessions that are live. It will also have things that people will have access to, videos and information and homework and assignments and more things, so that they get really, truly a full scope of the discipline of mediumship. It's going to be pretty hardcore. So I'm looking forward to that. There'll be levels of certification based on the performance of the individual. There'll be an academic certification for people that don't want to practice, and there will be an intuitive arts specialist for someone who has taken the class but they're not able to sustain a reading for an hour. They may get bits of true information but maybe not able to identify where that information came from on a consistent basis. And then there'll be a professional psychic certification, which will be for people that can absolutely sustain an hour worth of reading with accurate information, and yet still might not be as in tune with where that information comes from. They may have a general sense, but again, can't necessarily evidentiarily describe it. And then there'll be the professional psychic medium certification for those that can identify that source and convey their personality. And then there'll be an award of excellence for people that can render life-changing readings.
Nice. What do you think about countries like, I think, Canada, where doing psychic readings and mediumship sessions for money is actually against the law?
I am not happy to hear that because I think it's a discrimination. I don't think that the government should determine the content of a business. They need to determine the construct of a business, make sure that everything is right and proper and that kind of thing. But when it comes down to freedom of speech, I think that's a violation of that. I know that I worked here in Roanoke, Virginia, to get the city fee for having a business license, and the fee here for all businesses is $50, but for psychic mediums it was $1,200, which is the equivalent of what a business that makes $5 million would pay. And so I worked with city council. They reduced it to $300. It was right before their elections. I was very fortunate to have their kind attention, and they were planning to reduce it further, but the city manager intervened and refused to allow me to take it before city council again.
Right.
So my next step is probably to take it to the state and see if I can have that law changed, because it's just an unfair law. It's, Louisiana and California have really led in the legislation on that topic. Mm-hmm. They, have had a lot of Supreme Court discussion about it. And
right. Well, I guess I guess my producer just Googled the one in Canada, and it is in fact against the law to practice mediumship for money. But I guess the law was actually proposed by the people and then enacted by the government. That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how Canadian law operates. If I was in Canada, I would be advocating for a change because, it's sort of guilty before proved innocence, and it sort of affirms the suspicion that people are somehow being dishonest in their practice. California has a wonderful example of that. They did monitor fraud in their state for several years, and they found that the incidence was so low that it was not worth their time to try to monitor it, and they ceased monitoring it. I do know that there are fraudulent people, but
yeah, it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because I know that a lot of our medical practitioners are absolutely hamstrung by overregulation, and yet a lot of our esoteric practitioners aren't held accountable. And so anybody can go out there and hang their shingle regardless. I mean, it sounds to me like you're building a hierarchy in your school that a person is qualified according to their gift and their ability and their willingness to really buckle down
and their ethics.
Their trade. Their ethics.
I'm also teaching ethics, and Bob Olson, the Best Psychic Directory, which I just became part of and I'm very proud to say so, has a wonderful list of sort of psychic guidelines, not reading by the minute, having your own website, very clearly disclosing fees up front, that kind of thing. And so I think that, like all new fields, that those guidelines the professionalism in those guidelines are going to be determined as the field grows. For now, people kind of hide under the religious banner, and I could have totally not challenged city council on the business license and done it under my 501c3 and not have any problem at all, because I have the religious right to practice whatever I wish. But
now,
the IRS
would you clarify? Yeah, would you clarify for me what a 501c3 is?
A 501c3 is just a not-for-profit organization. It's mine is a public charity, and it's also considered a religious organization. But the IRS does.
So you don't charge for your services?
Oh, I do, absolutely, because it's my
sorry,
business. I do not operate under the 501c3.
Oh, okay.
I do events under my business, which is a sub-S corporation, and I do some of them for the benefit of the nonprofit. But no, I do, and I think that any time that you use an ability, whether it's mathematics or an understanding of physics, or whether it's public service or whatever it is you do, your time is valuable and you deserve to be compensated for it.
Got it. Well, if you don't get paid for what you're doing, you have to do something else, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people wouldn't come. I've read for thousands of people. So where did they all come from? There's obviously a need for somebody that is intuitive, that can see beyond the physical. I've had government contractors help them with their career path, and they couldn't even disclose the entities to me that they were applying to, but I helped guide them through that. I've worked with police officers and local government officials and housewives and people that have small businesses that want to transition into something more sort of holistic or sustainable. They don't know how to make that transition. Relationships.
Before we run out of time, would you mind sharing with people where they can find your services?
Oh, thank you. The easiest place is my website, which is mediumtracylockwood.com. And I'm also on YouTube. I have, I think, close to 80 videos up there right now. They're actually more audios than videos. I'm getting ready to start doing more video work, but there's a tremendous amount of information about Medium Tracey Lockwood, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest.
I have about half a minute. How would you suggest people? Would you recommend that people find their own inner knowing, their own inner guidance, so they don't have to seek out help?
Obviously, people can develop on their own, but I think that there's, I do private instruction and I also do group instruction, and there's a benefit to each.
Tracey, time has flown, and I'm afraid we're out of it. But thank you so much for being on the program. Our guest this hour has been psychic educator and clairvoyant medium Tracey Lockwood. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to past thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge and comforted with love as you find your inner guidance.
Searching through the night, one people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation,